So we're talking about like how things have changed, obviously, in the pandemic, right? What is the one thing you would say would take away, Natalie, that CHO, CSO should know, learn what to do different to succeed in the new operating environment?
Yeah, so a lot has changed in the last few years, and the social contract between employers and employees has radically changed. Employees want a lot more from their employers, and there's a lot of data that shows what they want, but for us it boils down to the 3 Ps: pay for today, work with purpose, and pathways for tomorrow. And employers who want a loyal workforce that will be with them for the jobs of the future need to invest in those 3 things.
What can CIOs do, or leaders do in general, to succeed in this environment?
Treat them like human beings. That's been a thread through this entire conference. And take their manacles off, give them some freedom, give them some flexibility, for crying out loud, and stop pretending that we're running businesses the way that we run industrial age factories, with punishment and reward. Human beings don't work like that.
It really is about creating this experience for the employees to actually do great work. I think we keep missing the mark on that. The pandemic has helped a bit with that and giving the people more freedom to work from where they choose and what's going to make them really productive. But we need to do better. We're not doing enough so that we can actually see them reach their full potential and create things that are really great that will drive business forward.
A lot of times it's about making sure we're listening in different ways than we have before. Sometimes it's reading between the lines. Sometimes it's understanding that there's different avenues that, their people's behaviors are then more telling, or things like that. It's not just walk by down the halls and you hear things anymore. Sometimes that's not where you hear them. And sometimes it's not over a Slack channel either. We have to get a lot better at the ways that we listen. Yep. And I think there's a lot of interesting, technologies and thought coming out from a, kind of the future work from how do we listen? How do we use data to listen better to our employees? That's gonna be really important.
I think it's more has to deal with the Netflix culture around freedom and responsibility. Now, the whole thinking behind this is that in traditional type companies, decision making can be slow. There's a lot of approvals needed. There's a lot of process in there, and the whole thinking behind this was how do we extrapolate that, trust our people, give them the autonomy to make great decisions, but make them quickly. Now, it often can get a little bit, I would say, lost because people are oh, freedom really means I get to do whatever the F I want. That's not quite the case. We need to inform all of our colleagues, here's what I'm thinking, this is the direction I think we need to go, and then getting to that decision and making that final call knowingly that you're not going to always make everybody happy. So I think it's being able to give your employees that freedom that they're still longing for, but in a responsible manner.
What we really tried to do was focus on the connections piece of it. How can we connect people together more often, even in very informal ways? It's not about having a program that puts people in the same Slack channel together, things like that, but it's about even the informal ways where we can get the random molecules to bump against each other in their world, and then extend that out. So onboarding isn't 2 weeks or 1 day. Onboarding is at least a year, if not longer. How many times do people connect to each other?
And of the 160 million workers in America, there's about 100 million today who do not have the skills for the jobs of the future. So that's really what we're all about, is how we believe very strongly that talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. So how do you take a cashier in Arkansas or a warehouse worker at a distribution center and give them the skills and education that they need to be a Python coder or an HR analyst or something like that? And it's a really actually pretty complicated process. It starts with a thing called occupational identity, which is actually just helping people discover what's possible and how they might connect to it, and then building a bridge to get them to see the path from where they are today to where they could be and how that could change the lives of themselves and their families and the generations to come. And so when I think about what we can all do as employers for our employees, it really is painting a picture that career pathways are available, enabling those for every worker inside of our companies.
Upskilling and training is part of your employee curb appeal. And when an employee curb appeal is part of that reputational mandate that I think we have as leaders in a world with social Darwinism and Glassdoor, where folks will instantly withdraw their application or not apply at all if you have a terrible reputation. It's not just Glassdoor. People know more people than they ever have through the power of social media. And so if you have a reputation as a toxic micromanager, it's going to go really fast. So the upskilling is critical, obviously, but it's only one part of that reputational employee curb appeal that I think leaders need to focus on, and just understand that if we don't maintain that reputation, we can't possibly attract a workforce that's truly strong.
Half of the workforce doesn't have the skills they need to do the next job. Yep. It's not a straight line in any way, shape, or form. It's almost three-dimensional probably, not even just left and right and zigzag. So I think for us, that's the challenge as well, is that knowing enough about the workforce and what they need to be ready to go in any different direction.
And it's an interesting trend, the redefinition of career path. This used to be usually very linear and in one function. So people would know finance really well, HCM really well, sales really well. And the companies have to do some little transformation, pivoting, thick movement. It's the people who worked in 2, 3, 4 different areas and can right away say, that's not going to work. And this is why, they're going to say, yeah, we have a shot at doing this. And those people are rare right now. These companies are not feeding that career path from their perspective.
If we do go into a full employment recession, not saying that that's going to happen, but let's say it does, just as we saw in the pandemic, it is going to force some of the other generations to stay in jobs longer, which means you still now have this massive gap in communication between these generations. We're already seeing it. We're already seeing a struggle right now. Definitely, I would say generational in terms of being in office versus being remote. That's already at play. The way in which we communicate with each other is different. Some people prefer like email, and I want to stick to email. And you have younger generations like, I'm on chat all day. I don't do email. So we have to find a way to start bridging this communication across these different generations, or actually the workforce in these companies will continue to suffer, and you're not going to get the output in what you're looking for.
Right. So this whole notion of the quiet quitting and whatnot, and I don't buy that really at all. I think the young people have just as much a desire to have an impact and to have meaningful work as we did when we were younger, et cetera. So the thing that I'm kind of interested in is Gallup. Gallup used to say the number one predictor of someone quitting was their boss, their manager. It was the number one thing. Now they say the number one predictor is whether the person has a friend at work. And when I connect the dots to the last panel conversation about remote work, I really worry about the young people in the workforce today, because I think about just how important those first friends out of college, or the first friends you made in your first couple of jobs, were so meaningful. And I don't see how in a completely remote environment how people are going to create those strong ties that they did before. So I believe that the young people want to work, that they have incredible contributions to make, and I'm not sure that we have the recipe right now to set them up for success.
Build resilience. Everyone should have therapy. It makes your brain better. It's mental health is healthcare.
Employers need to put their money where their mouth is. People have been talking about the war for talent forever. People is the most important asset. And it's a very transparent world we live in, and people out there today have very high bars, so you can't fake it anymore. If you want to show them that you care about them and that you will invest in their future, you have to actually put your money where your mouth is.
I believe you need to be flexible and trust them.
Okay.
Let them be able to do what they need to do to get things done.
And I'll button it back to the beginning, is to keep listening.